Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something you might see every day, maybe even step around, but it's story. It's surprisingly deep. We're tracking a single symbol, the thorn or the thistle.
That's right. And our goal really is to follow this humble plant's journey through some foundational texts. We want to see how it goes from being, part of a curse in Genesis to something completely different, a vessel for divine glory, believe it or not, and then ultimately a crown that flips everything on its head.
Okay.
It's like following a symbolic red thread and understanding why this journey matters.
Okay, before we get into the symbolism, let's ground this in reality. What are these thorn plants like, say, in the Sinai or Palestine regions the sources talk about?
Well, think tough, really tough. We're talking about things like acacia species. These plants are survivors. They handle drought, terrible soil, places where almost nothing else grows.
Built to last, then?
Absolutely. But from a human perspective,
Yeah.
pretty much useless back then. The sources are clear. They offer basically zero nutrition for livestock. They're often bitter.
So people saw them as just waste, something to clear out.
Exactly. Fit for fuel, maybe, because they were everywhere and easy to burn. But otherwise, just obstacles, the definition of humble, even despised, you might say.
Right. The lowest of the low in the plant world. So that's the big question, isn't it? If it's seen as so worthless, so tied to failure and barrenness, how does it suddenly become this key player in divine moments?
And that's where we hit the first major, honestly shocking appearance, the burning bush.
Ah, yes. Moses on Mount Horeb, a total life-changing moment for him. He sees this bush on fire.
Right. And this is where the paradox just slams into you. Moses looks, and yeah, the bush is burning fiercely. But the crucial thing, the detail that stops him in his tracks, is that it's not being consumed. It's not burning up.
Okay.
And the texts really lean into this. It's presented as this profound symbol, showing two aspects of God at once, the transcendent and the immanent.
Let's break that down.
Yeah.
So the thorn bush itself,
Yeah.
that's the humble part.
Precisely. It's the base reality, the ordinary, perishable, easily destroyed part of creation. The useless shrub we just talked about.
And the fire.
That's God's holiness,
Yeah.
his glory. The texts often use consuming fire to describe God's pure, powerful nature.
So the paradox is God's putting his overwhelming, consuming presence onto the weakest possible thing.
Yes, onto this scrubby little thorn bush. But, and this is key, he holds back the destructive power of that fire. He doesn't let it annihilate the bush.
Which feels like, well, obviously power, but also immense care. Protective grace, maybe?
That's a great way to put it, protective grace. God showing his holiness can be present, fully present, without destroying the frail thing it encounters, especially when dealing with his creation.
And there's purpose tied right into that grace, isn't there?
Immediately, because it's from this specific, lowly burning thorn bush that God reveals his name, I am that I am. And right then, he gives Moses this monumental task, lead Israel out of slavery.
Wow. So the message is pretty clear. Divine missions, huge historical shifts. They can start in the most unexpected, humble places, not necessarily with fanfare and grandeur.
Exactly. It sets a pattern, really.
Okay, so that's the start. But you mentioned this red thread. The thorn keeps showing up, tracking this bigger story of human history and divine interaction. Where does it weave in next, after the burning bush?
Well, it goes right back to the beginning, in a sense, to the consequences laid out in Genesis. After the fall, the text says the ground itself is cursed because of humanity's actions.
Right, Genesis 3:17-18. Cursed is the ground. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you.
There it is. The thorn is introduced as a direct symbol of that curse. It represents the disorder that's entered creation, the broken link between people and the land. It stands for hard labor, for suffering, for the sheer struggle just to get by in this altered world.
So physical struggle first.
Yeah.
But then it evolves, right? In the Gospels, it seems to take on a more spiritual meaning.
It does. Think about the parable of the sower.
The seeds sown among thorns, they get choked out, don't they?
Exactly. They sprout, there's potential, but they never bear fruit. And the text explicitly tells us what those thorns represent in this context. It's not about farming anymore.
It's about life getting in the way.
Pretty much. Worldly anxieties, the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and just other desires. Basically all the secular stuff, the selfish pursuits, the worries that can crowd out spiritual life. They prevent growth, prevent maturity. They choke the potential.
From physical curse to spiritual blockage, it's quite a progression. And this whole journey, this thread of curse and struggle, it seems to hit its peak, its most intense point at Golgotha.
Absolutely. That's the moment of reversal. It's incredibly dramatic. Roman soldiers, mocking Jesus' claim to be a king, grab the very symbol of the curse.
Thorns.
Thorns, they weave them into a crown and shove it onto his head. They dress him in purple, call him king of the Jews. It's meant as pure humiliation.
But theologically,
Yeah.
how does that mockery become, well, salvation?
The sources frame this as the concentrated curse. Jesus, sometimes called the last Adam, is shown physically taking on the entire weight of that original curse from Genesis. By wearing that crown of thorns, he's absorbing the consequences of humanity's brokenness, the toil, the suffering, the separation,
He's bearing it all.
all of it. And in doing so, he neutralizes its power. But it also does something radical to the idea of kingship itself.
How so?
It creates what you might call a subversive kingship. His authority isn't based on power grabs or wealth or military might. It's established through the ultimate act of sacrifice, through embracing suffering.
So the symbol of the curse.
Is turned completely inside out. The thorn, the mark of pain and failure, becomes the instrument of redemption. It's the sign of his victory, achieved through suffering, not in spite of it.
A total reversal. And if the curse is reversed, then the story needs a sense of final restoration, right? Which the prophets seem to hint at.
Definitely. Isaiah, for instance, paints this beautiful picture of future restoration, Isaiah 55.13. It promises a transformation of the landscape itself.
Ah, the exchange imagery.
Yes. Where the thorn bush grew, the pine tree will stand. Where the thistle was, the myrtle, or some translations say pomegranate, will flourish.
It's not just removal, it's replacement with something good.
Exactly. It symbolizes the permanent undoing of that Genesis curse, the healing of creation. It's a promise of a new reality where the barrenness and pain caused by sin are gone, replaced by beauty, fruitfulness, life.
Okay, so that's the huge historical arc. Curse to crown to restoration. But you mentioned the sources use thorns in other ways too, more like immediate lessons, day-to-day stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond the grand narrative, the thorn is a really versatile literary tool. It's used constantly for contrast, for warnings, for illustrating moral points.
Give me an example of contrast.
A really lovely one is in the Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 2. As a lily among brambles, so is my love among the young women.
A lily among thorns.
Right. The thorns or brambles represent the ordinary world, maybe even the harsh, potentially damaging environment around the beloved. The lily stands out pure, beautiful, unique against that backdrop.
So it's an image of staying true, maintaining purity or distinctiveness even when surrounded by negativity.
Precisely. It's an instruction almost. Keep your beauty, your integrity, even in a thorny world. And we see it applied to character too, like in Proverbs.
Proverbs 15.980, isn't it? The way of the lazy is like a hedge of thorns.
That's the one. Why a hedge of thorns? Because laziness isn't just passive inaction. The source suggests it actively creates obstacles.
Ah, so you make your own problems.
You build your own thorny barriers. It's a tangled, painful path you create for yourself, blocking your own progress, which contrasts sharply with the level path promised to the upright and diligent.
Makes sense. Okay, what about judgment? Since thorns are seen as worthless agriculturally.
They become symbols for things destined for destruction, yeah. A quick, vivid example is Psalm 118.1. It compares enemies surrounding the speaker to a fire of thorns.
A fire of thorns. What does that imply?
Think about burning dry thorns. It flares up really fast, looks fierce, maybe sounds crackly and intimidating, but it burns out almost instantly. There's no substance, no lasting fuel.
So a threat that looks scary but collapses quickly. Short-lived opposition.
Exactly. And then there's a much more sobering use of this imagery in the book of Hebrews, chapter 6, verse 8.
Right, that passage talks about land that gets rain, gets all the good stuff, all the chances, but still only produces thorns and thistles.
And the consequence. That land is deemed worthless, rejected, and ultimately faces burning. It's a stark warning.
About what specifically?
About receiving God's grace, his nurture, all the opportunities for growth, but failing to produce any spiritual fruit. It links back to the Genesis curse, but makes judgment hinge on, well, on productivity or the lack of it, despite receiving blessings.
A serious warning indeed. Okay, one last major aspect seems to be the thorn as an irritant. Something persistent and painful, maybe even corrective.
Yes, and there are two really powerful examples of this. First, an external one, a warning given to the Israelites in the book of Numbers.
Numbers 33.55, if they don't drive out the inhabitants of the land.
Those people will become thorns in your sides and thorns in your eyes.
Wow, what a metaphor. So not just enemies outside, but constant painful internal problems.
Exactly. It's about the long-term consequences of compromise, of disobedience. Leaving those thorns in place means ongoing irritation, spiritual friction, internal conflict. It's a self-inflicted wound from not following through.
And the second example, it feels like we have to talk about Paul's thorn in the flesh.
We do. It's perhaps the most famous personal application. In 2 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about this chronic suffering. He calls it a thorn in the flesh, even identifies it as a messenger of Satan sent to torment him.
Which sounds purely negative, but he sees God's purpose in it.
He does. This is the final, deeply personal paradox we see with the thorn. Paul begs God repeatedly to take this pain away.
But God says no.
God says no. The response is, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." The thorn stays.
Why? Why leave him in pain? What's the protective element there?
The text suggests it was deliberate, a tool even, used by God. It was left to keep Paul humble, to prevent him from becoming conceited because of the incredible spiritual insights and revelations he'd received.
Ah, so the pain was actually a form of protection.
In a way, yes, a painful preventative measure against pride. This thorn, this ongoing struggle, forced him into a state of constant dependence on God's grace and power, not his own strength or status. It shows God using hardship not just as punishment, but strategically for character refinement.
Yes, quite something. What an incredible arc for such a simple, common plant. We started with this useless desert scrub, symbol of a curse, saw it become the vessel for God's unconsumed presence in the burning bush, and then end up as the very crown that signifies redemption and the overturning of that original curse.
It really does capture so much, doesn't it? The whole sweep of the human condition described in these texts, the toil, the struggle, the weakness, but also the consistent theme that divine power shows up most clearly, most protectively in the weakest, most unlikely places. God's glory shines through the worthless vessel.
It really does. Which leaves us, and you, with a final thought to chew on. We've seen how even profound, persistent struggles like Paul's thorn in the flesh aren't necessarily meaningless. They can be allowed, even used by a higher power. Maybe to prevent something worse, like arrogance, or maybe to cultivate something better, like deep reliance on grace. So the question to reflect on is this. Is there a thorn in your own life? A persistent difficulty, a struggle, maybe even a pain? Could it possibly be serving a protective purpose? Could it be a strange kind of grace, pushing you towards a strength beyond your own? Something to think about until our next deep dive.